Imagine being one of the founding engineers of the internet and then leaving all that success and prestige behind to dedicate the rest of your life to saving the planet. Let me introduce to you Dr. Sailesh Rao. Currently one of the most influential environmental activists in our world today, Sailesh started off transforming the internet from its early analog form to the digital superhighway accessible to over 7 billion people, and boosting its speed to the one that we are so used to today, despite being told at that time that it was impossible. However, after discovering how dire the climate crisis was in 2006, Sailesh sold off his company and committed the rest of his life to solving the environmental crisis affecting all life on Earth. Dr. Rao is the author of 4 life-changing books, including Carbon Dharma and Carbon Yoga, and is also the executive producer of several documentaries that you may have already seen on streaming platforms like Netflix. Cowspiracy, What the Health, They Are Trying to Kill Us, The End of Medicine, The Land of Ahimsa, and Milked, just to name a few. His work is also featured in the award-winning film Countdown to Year Zero. Sailesh was designated a climate hero by The Guardian newspaper in 2023. You will be blown away by his journey and his metamorphosis as we dive deep into his life, his mind, his insights, and most importantly, the realistic solutions that he is proposing to heal our dying planet. I've wanted to have you on this podcast for a long time. In fact, one of the reasons why I started this is to be able to learn from you and interview you and just try and get all of your wisdom, because I feel this is one of the most important episodes that I'm gonna record. So just like all the other episodes before this, 2 of the most important days of one person's life. Now, this is the question that I ask all of my guests. And that question is 2 of the most important days in our lives is the one day that we are born, and secondly, the day that we find out why. So if you could summarize, I know this is difficult, if you could summarize in just 2 lines, what is your purpose in this life? What have you found that to be?
I wake up every day thinking of how to get to a vegan world by 2026. That's why I'm born. That I really feel that everything I've done so far in my life has brought me to this point where I can design a system like that, a system of normalized non-violence.
Now, I know this is a massive topic, but what I really want to know is how you came to this point. So tell me a little bit about your childhood. How was it growing up, and how did you come to this point? So if we just start by where you were born, where you grew up.
I was born in Suratkal, which is 10 miles north of Mangalore in Karnataka on the west coast of India. And I was raised in Chennai, which is on the east coast. So my childhood, I was going to school with my brothers and sister in Chennai. But every summer, I remember going to my grandparents' place in Mangalore, And so that's where all the cousins would get together and have a great time, actually. So I used to look forward to that. And a lot of my experiences that I remember today come from that interaction. So I have very close family because of that. Because all the cousins got to know each other when we were kids.
But when did this almost awakening start growing for you in terms of the fact that you want to be instrumental in healing the climate and the planet right now? Was that a little mission in your life at that time when we as kids we have these little goals? Was that something that was ever on your mind?
Oh, no.
No, okay.
No, I had no idea about what was happening in the environment until probably 2005. Until then, I would read articles once in a while, but I wasn't that interested in it. But when I came home one day, I was working on 10 gigabit Ethernet at that time. And when I did gigabit Ethernet, it was a very collegial body that I was working in. So, but by the time the internet became highly commercialized, and there was so much money being thrown at it, 10 gigabit Ethernet was a very political project.
I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop you there. So, if we rewind a little bit, how did you start working on the internet? Because when I was researching into your life, I realized that you are one of the founding engineers of the internet. The fact that we're able to enjoy the internet today, the fact that this laptop can connect to the internet, was because of the protocol that you designed. The fact that there are all these millions of connections happening in the world is because of this design that you made, this invention. Tell me a little bit about how you firstly got into that, and then how that transition happened, because you were literally trying to create something that many had told you was impossible.
Right. Yeah. Several times things like that have happened to me. People say it's impossible, but this one, I was trained as a systems engineer at Stanford, so I did my PhD at the Information Systems Laboratory, and so I was always the person that they would come to and ask, how do you solve a problem? Okay. So I did that with getting video encoding on a single chip. So the first MPEG encoder, we worked on that in 1991. And then in 95, I think it was 95, late 95, I was asked to look at 100 million bits per second, 100 megabit per second Ethernet standard. And the industry was facing a lot of recalls and field returns because it wasn't working so well. So the chairman of the committee asked me to take a look at the 100 megabit standard and tell them why it was not functioning well. So I looked at it and I realized actually on that cable I can do 1,000 megabits per second easily. If we use the same kind of protocols that we were doing in voice band modems, if I just translate that up to a higher speed, I can get a gigabit per second on that cable. But the standard itself had some problems, the 100 megabit standard. So the next meeting I went and made a proposal, we should make a gigabit on this cable. And then when that falls back to 100, it will be very robust. But the 100 megabit standard, if everyone implements to that standard, it may not be robust. Okay, so, and people laughed at me. They said, you're crazy. We're having trouble getting 100 megabit per second to work on this, and you're talking about doing 1,000 megabits per second. But they said, if you can convince enough people, you can have a standard. So go work on it. So I started a study group for that, and by the end of that year, people realized that I was serious, that because there were a lot of people coming to our meetings. And so everyone was saying, yeah, it can be done. And my company got acquired by Level 1 for this standard, for the work that we were doing. And so we got the standard done by 1999, and then Intel came and acquired Level 1 for the same technology. So I wound up making the chip for Intel. And so we got it on the motherboard by 2003, which means every motherboard that came out of Intel had a gigabit Ethernet chip. Okay, so suddenly everyone had access to a high-speed connectivity on their computer, and every computer that was in the server, in the backbone, also had this. So the internet became very robust as a result of that, because it was 10 times faster, and it was more robust than the 100 megabit standard. I had people come and tell me that they couldn't get 100 megabit to work on some cables, but 1,000 works. Right? So they all became believers that it can be done. So then at that meeting, again, I used to go to the standards meetings, and at that standards meeting, there was someone saying I can do 10 gigabit on the same cable, 10 times faster than what we had just finished. And this person who had told me that I was crazy for proposing a gigabit was egging him on, saying, yeah, of course it can be done. I said, Howard, it's not that easy. It's not just cranking something up. And he told me, look, you proved me wrong. Okay? Maybe this person knows something that you don't know. So I'm going to give him a chance now. to do 10 gigabit. I said, okay, that's the way you want it. But I realized that we were getting close to the theoretical limits of what you can do on that cable. And it's going to be really hard. So I continued working with the committee for a couple of years. And I noticed, that the standard was going the wrong way, the 10 gigabit standard. They were making compromises based on political considerations instead of dealing with the technical problems, right? So I realized this is not going to work. So that's the frame of mind in which I had come home one day and turned on the TV, and there was Vice President Al Gore talking about climate change. And I was so shocked by what he was saying. I told my wife, if half of what he's saying is true, I feel like I'm wasting my time butting my head with people over political standards, right? Why should I even deal with this if this is what's going on in the world?
At this stage, you're at the peak of your career. Yeah, this is the place that most of us would dream to be at, right? You were successful financially, career-wise, you'd reached that peak that most of us just don't even get there, right? And yet, and the other thing is, which I found really interesting, is you took an almost impossible problem and managed to find a solution for it. And it took you, there was no outside influence to make you reach that solution for this problem, because we know that sometimes too many people are working with too many other reasons and opinions trying to make a solution happen from a challenge. But yet here you managed to solve something that most people were saying was impossible, right? You managed to find a solution as an engineer, right? Now, you come home, you switch on the TV, you've got Al Gore scaring us, with all this information about climate change. And I feel, anyone who would be listening to that would be scared, because for the first time you've heard something that makes you think, oh, you know what, our Earth, our planet is in trouble. Right. Now, again, for a lot of people with their successful careers and lives, they switch the TV on and see that, and they would just think one of two things. Firstly, they'll think, okay, you know what, someone else will solve it. We've got governments there, we've got organizations there. We'll find a solution to this. I don't need to do anything. And secondly, they would think, maybe this is too far into the future, so maybe I don't need to worry about it just yet. But you realized it straight away, that this was a massive issue, which if we as a humanity do not find a solution for, we're all in trouble.
Absolutely. That was something I was rooted to my seat. I couldn't move. Okay, I was watching this and I was getting more and more stunned as I watched it. And so I told my wife, I have to focus on this. What's the point of leaving money for our children if the planet is going to be dead? So why am I working so hard to make more money, right? So, and she said, if you think it's that important, why don't you look into it? So that's how I started studying it. And I was also fortunate because when I finished my PhD, I went to my advisor, who's probably one of the best known systems people on the planet. Okay, so his name is Thomas Kailath. And I asked him, I feel like I know everything about nothing. That I took one problem and beat it to death, right? Is this what a PhD is all about? And he said, no, this is not why I gave you a PhD. He said, I gave you a PhD because I think you have the capacity to take any problem in any field and make a credible contribution to it. And that statement that he made stayed with me from that point on, throughout my career. So I realized that everything is just data and interactions between data. And as a systems engineer, I can tackle any problem and, understand how to solve it and, and come up with models. And so the usual thing that we do as engineers, come up with models and match it against reality and make sure that your solution actually does what it says it's going to do, right? So I jumped right into it. I said, okay, I'm going to start studying climate change. I'm going to start studying the environment and to see how would we solve this problem, okay? So first thing I wrote to Mr. Gore. I mean, within 3 months we closed down our company, the 10 gigabit company, and I stopped working on it.
So how was that? How was that interaction with your wife? Because, to tell your wife that, okay, you know what, we're in trouble, we need to do something about it, I have to close the company. How did that go?
So I told her, look, we have to close our company and focus on this full time. And she said, so, okay, I mean, I don't mind, let's do that. But what would happen if we run through our money and we don't have anything left, And I said, okay, if that happens, I'll go and work again. I know I can earn money if I want to, right? So that's the kind of discussion we had. That not to be afraid, we have to do this for our children. And let's just plunge in and do it, right? And so she agreed. I mean, this is why I say I'm so lucky to have a wife like mine, And so we actually found jobs for everyone who was working for us, and and helped them move on. And then we closed our company. And I wrote to Mr. Gore and I said, how can I help you?
Yeah. What in particular about that speech, talk, or presentation scared you the most? What was it?
I don't think it was fear. See, it was shock at the magnitude of the problem, at how consequential it was. And I was shocked that if the problem was this bad, why isn't everybody working on it? Why is everybody going on, with their daily lives? Because it's like that, right? It's like having a fire in your home. I had a fire in my home, so I know how that feels, right? And when you have a fire in your home, you focus on the fire. You don't focus on anything else. So, and I noticed that people were not focusing on the fire at all. Hardly anyone. Just Al Gore was talking about it. And he was talking to maybe 50 people in the room, right? So I wrote to him and I said, how can I help you? And he asked me to come and get trained by him. And I got trained by him in November of 2006, in the second batch that he trained. And so I went to Nashville to get trained by him. And then I spent the next year giving his talk. So I had promised to give his talk 10 times. So I did that. And then I started Climate Healers in 2007. And the objective of Climate Healers is to heal the climate. Because I felt that the way everyone was framing it, at least those who were working on climate change, was how do we make sure that the climate doesn't get much worse?
So rather than solve the problem, what they were doing is trying to just dampen it.
Yeah. I mean, how much worse is it going to get, and can we limit that, right, to 2 degrees Celsius? So the analogy I give is, if I have a fever, a 1 degree Celsius fever, and I go to a doctor, and the doctor is looking at me and saying, you have a lump on the side of your head, okay? I'll make sure that your temperature will not go over, your fever will not go over 2 degrees Celsius when you get a second lump on the other side of your head. And I would say, what are you doing? You're not treating me right, okay? You should teach me how to get rid of my fever, how to get rid of my lump. But that's the way we were dealing with Mother Earth, right? So Climate Healers was started with the intention of healing the climate. How do you reverse it? Okay? And that was my main focus. And that's what we engineers do. Okay? That's what I've done all my life, which is how do you solve a problem at the root? Root cause it and then solve the problem.
Mm-hmm. So your outlook and your approach to solving the problem was quite a lot different from what Al Gore was talking about, isn't it?
But he made it clear too. Okay, even during the training, he told us, my objective is to preserve civilization as we know it. Okay, he said that very clearly. And I realized that it's civilization as we know it that's causing the problem. So why would we want to preserve it? You have to create something that would reverse the problem, right? So that was my focus. So in that sense, I took a 180-degree turn from the way he was looking at the problem.
What are the barriers you faced at that stage, and what did you overcome? So, I know that there was a little bit of different ideas that you had, and your research showed different facts to what was being presented. So, what were the barriers that you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Well, even during the training, Al Gore's training, I asked him a question. I said, suppose we bring back the forest on the land that we're currently using for grazing animals. Can we not reverse climate change? And he turned to Roy Neal, his chief of staff, and he said, how did this guy get in here? And he just sidestepped the question. Okay, so he didn't answer it properly. So I realized there was something that he didn't want to talk about. So when there is something like that, because I was doing back of the envelope calculations, and I realized there's so much land being used for animals, and land has 3 times as much CO2 as the atmosphere. So simple calculations will tell you that if we just restore the forests on the land that we're using for grazing animals, you can reverse climate change, right? So when he didn't answer that, then I started digging into it more and more and more. So because I realized that that's where the solution probably is.
So the story that we were being told was that there's too much CO2 in the atmosphere. The burning of fossil fuels is causing it. When doing it for energy, for manufacturing, for transportation, for heating, all of these things, right? And the way to solve it would be to address these things and make it a little bit more efficient. That was a story that was being told at that time. Yeah. But you found out the facts about what was really going on, wasn't it? And the problem was not just CO2. It was methane, it was nitrous oxide, and the causes were not just fossil fuels. So I love your analogy, because most of us in society have no clue still about what the biggest cause of global warming, climate breakdown, ecological emergency is. So your analogy that I read about, the burning machine and the killing machine, right? Please go through that for us, because I think that, out of every other explanation I've heard, really simplifies the facts and the causes of the crisis that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, see, there are 2 major engines of planetary destruction that humans have unleashed. The first is what I call the burning machine, which is, we've been burning for a long time, right? Wood initially, and then fossil fuels lately. And so ever since we discovered how to control fire, we've been burning. Okay, and the more you burn, the more greenhouse gases you're going to emit. Okay? And I know that the burning machine is causing a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. No question about that. But the other machine that's also causing a lot of greenhouse gas emissions is the killing machine. Because we have been killing trees, we have been killing animals for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, right? So, and every act of killing leads to decay. And every life form is a carbon life form. When the life form decays, you get carbon dioxide. If it's an oxidized degradation. If it's a non-oxidized degradation, it becomes methane. Okay? So if you don't have enough oxygen, it becomes methane. So we know that these greenhouse gases are being emitted from life being killed. And it's been going on for thousands of years, right? So when people talk about just fossil fuels, I say you're missing a big part of this, which is the killing machine. Right? And the killing machine is killing, right, 80 billion land animals, 1 to 3 trillion sea animals, and millions of acres of forests every year. Okay? As well as 4 billion acres of the ocean floor every year. And every time you kill plants or trees or animals, you're going to cause CO2 emissions. Okay? And that actually dwarfs what we are doing with fossil fuels. That's what I found out. And the fact that we're using so much land where we have cut down the trees and we have replaced the trees with grass to graze animals. Okay, that's 37% of the ice-free land area of the planet. And so those lands used to be forests 200 years ago. So which means that every year that we continue eating animals, continue grazing animals, we are saying to the earth, I don't want the forest to come back. So we have a choice. If you eat plants, you can restore all that land back to forests. And then the trees will be growing, right? And when the trees grow, they're going to take down the CO2. They're going to draw down the CO2 from the atmosphere. So that's what I call the opportunity cost of the land that's being used for animal agriculture. And that in engineering, we always take into account the opportunity cost. Because when you make a decision, you have to choose, this decision versus this decision. Well, if this decision you take, you can actually draw down the CO2. That's a potential negative emissions, okay, that you're saying I don't want when you just focus on this decision, right? So when you take that into account, my calculation showed that animal agriculture is responsible for at least 87% of greenhouse gas emissions on an annual basis, right? And that's, when I did that calculation, when I say it's an at least, it's an engineering lower bound, which means I guarantee it, okay, as an engineer. And it's based on known CO2 that's growing on that land today. See, when you say, I'm going to release that land and let forests come back, and you say, how much CO2 can be sequestered on that land? So how do you estimate that? You have to know how much vegetation is already growing on that land. And we know how much vegetation is already growing on that land based on how much food the animals are already eating. And there is an estimate for that. And that they're only eating above ground vegetation, which means however much they're eating above ground, twice as much will be sequestered below ground.
Exactly. And what percentage, say if you cut down forests in any given area, pristine ecosystems you're taking away, what you're left with, the barren land which has been overgrazed and all of that, what is the carbon sequestration potential of that land compared to what it was when it was original forest? What's the difference in the...
Well, on the average, a forest stores about 50 tons per acre. Okay, so if you cut down like 37% of the ice-free land area of the planet is something like 12 billion acres of land. Okay, 50 tons per acre of carbon, not CO2. That's 600 billion tons of carbon you could store on that land if that was an average forest, right?
So that means CO2 is a lot more.
Right, yeah. So CO2 will be 4 times as much. 2.4 trillion tons. So it's there's an enormous potential for land to reverse climate change. Just land. I'm not even looking at ocean. Ocean again, we are deforesting or cutting down 4 billion acres of land every year by bottom trawling, right? And somehow the earth is compensating for that. Right? So, because the earth is a self-healing system, okay, she is desperately trying to heal, like our body, right? So, whatever depredation you do on earth, she's trying to undo that damage somewhere else, right? And so, if we didn't do that depredation, you're actually allowing the earth to heal faster.
So, essentially, we're looking at forests within the ocean, those things that we can't see, that are helping us more than anything else, isn't it? But yet, we are destroying those forests with the trawlers.
Yeah, with the bottom trawlers, yeah. So, if we go vegan, so that's why I look at veganism as the baseline for a new civilization that we have to create. Because we have created a very efficient climate heating civilization. We are really good at heating the climate. Okay, so no other species could have done what we have done. We have literally prevented the earth from ever going back another ice age again, as long as we are around. Okay? So, ice age is over. The Quaternary ice age is over. 2.7 million years it's been going on. Now we ended it. Okay, and we are the first generation to realize that. We are also the last generation that can turn this around from a climate heating civilization to a climate healing civilization. Because if we continue with the climate heating, we are going to kill all life as we know it. If we kill life as we know it, we are going to die. Okay, so to me, it's a black and white situation. In that case, do I want to leave a world in which I have deliberately killed it for my children and for my grandchildren, my granddaughter especially? But or do I want to work on creating a civilization or creating a new way of life where we lead our ordinary lives and the planet thrives? That's a system design. Okay, that's what I'm trying to do. That's a new system that you have to design.
So out of all the activities, from what you're saying, out of all the activities that we're involved in as a species, it is our consistent habit of breeding, killing, and eating other animals that is the biggest cause of most, if not all, of our ecological, environmental emergencies today.
Absolutely.
So if we preserve life, both on land and in the seas, we can actually save ourselves, right? It comes down to that, doesn't it?
It's actually, it's quite simple. It's common sense, isn't it? It's to say that nature amplifies everything you ask for. So it's like a wishing tree. She's a wish-fulfilling tree, really. She's wish-fulfilling nature is what we have. So when we go to nature and say, I want to kill that, she says, okay, kill that. I'll kill more for you. She'll amplify that, right? So essentially the killing becomes the cycle. And if we go to nature and say we want to heal, we want to now restore, we start planting trees, restoring ecosystems, she'll help too. She'll bring back more forests for us. The example of Sadhana Forest in Auroville. Aviram told me that 3 out of 4 trees in Sadhana Forest, they didn't plant. Nature planted. Because they were planting. Okay? They were planting and nature was saying, okay, I'll help you. How does that happen? Well, you're planting trees, and if the trees are growing, it means that you have enough water there. Okay? When you have enough water there, animals come to drink the water, and they then poop the seeds for new trees to be born. Okay? So even though that land was completely barren, there may still be some seeds under the ground that is still ready to come up when it has water. So this is how nature replenishes, right, and amplifies what we ask for. And so if we keep asking for death, we will get it. Because that's what we do when we kill animals, right? Raising and killing animals. We're saying, they want you to die. And so she said, okay, I'll kill more too, and I'll kill you too.
Yeah. So even on a selfish level, say if you were someone in the world who just cared about themselves and their family, right? Saying, okay, if I'm earned this much, I have a nice house, that'll be enough for me. But even on that selfish level, we have to be part of a larger solution, because I think we're all coming to slowly realize that it's not us, ourselves, keeping ourselves alive. It is actually nature, it is the planet keeping us alive. And if we don't look after the planet, then we're asking for our own demise. It's the way I was able to describe it to someone is when we go out there and we cut down forests and create farms, when we go into the seas and empty the oceans, we're literally taking a gun and shooting ourselves with lots of holes in our lungs, because those two systems are our regulatory, almost our true lungs. So we're committing suicide. So every time we take a bite out of someone else's flesh, or we drink someone else's milk, we're literally burning down our very life support systems. We're literally killing ourselves in the process, isn't it?
Yeah, we're impacting it for sure. So if you look at the life support systems of the planet, and the Stockholm Resilience Institute has identified 9 planetary boundaries that we need to stay within to sustain life on Earth. Okay, and so these are all complex systems, and they've identified 6 of them that we have gone into the red zone. So, and any one of them in the red zone is sufficient to kill life as we know it.
Just like in our bodies, if our lungs die, we die. We don't have to have all of our organs fail before we die, right? Yeah.
Now 6 of those organs are failing, okay, on Earth. So 6 of those are failing, and they're all in the red zone, meaning it's critical. They're all in critical condition. Okay, and what I've found is that all 6 of them can be reversed if we all go vegan. Okay, this is why I say getting to a vegan world by 2026 is my number one goal. That's my purpose in life. And telling people it's not that hard. Okay, it is eat this instead of that, wear this instead of that, and change our focus, change our goal to restoring ecosystems as opposed to destroying them. It's common sense, isn't it? I mean, if you want to live, you need to restore things and you need to make sure that they are thriving.
And for yourself, you weren't born vegan.
No, I was not. Yeah.
You took this path a lot later on when you realized how much your actions were impacting the planet and yourself in that way. What was that moment for you? Because I remember in your book, which again, I have to say, it's almost like my Bible, I carry it everywhere. I feel out of all the books that I have read, it holds the most realistic, most practical solutions and explanations to where we are. Carbon Dharma. But you mentioned in that book that there was one point that made you realize that the fact that you were consuming dairy was the cause of this devastation. What was that moment like for you? Because
it's etched in my mind. I was questioning my dairy consumption well before that. Okay, so starting in 2006, I was saying maybe my dairy consumption is part of the problem. I was a vegetarian. I was born vegetarian.
For ethical reasons.
Okay. And I was raised vegetarian. And I thought, I'm not hurting the cow, only drinking the milk from the cow. That's what I was told, right? But I knew that it wasn't so cut and dried. Okay, I knew that cows were treated badly in the US. But I told myself, I'll still consume dairy because we don't do it that way in India. There is a way to do this nicely. Our industries are not doing it that way, but it can be done nicely. So that was the justification I was using, the ethical justification for consuming dairy. And then I started to look at the environmental impact of dairy. Okay, that was starting in 2006. And I found papers that said that dairy is only a little bit worse than going vegan. Okay, so the impact is just a little bit more. And I bought into it. I said, okay, it's not that bad, just a little bit worse than going vegan. Then I went to this forest in Rajasthan and I saw what was happening. I saw this fence, and to the right of the fence, it was lush green forest, and to the left, it was barren land. And I saw all these old cows walking around eating anything new that was growing on the ground. And these were all dairy cows who had stopped giving milk. Okay? And I wanted cows not to be hurt, so which means I wanted the cows to live out their lives. So I realized as a dairy consumer, an ethical dairy consumer who didn't want to hurt the cows, I was causing a tremendous amount of damage in the forest. Because these cows were eating anything that was growing on the ground, which means there is nothing for the deer to eat. And the deer dies, and then if the deer dies, the tiger dies. So I realized that consuming dairy is like consuming beef. Okay? In fact, you're better off eating the cow after you've finished exploiting the cow. Okay? So then the cow does not hang around eating and not producing anything, so to speak. So all this calculation, all this realization went through my mind in an instant. Okay? And had this sense of shame that I was fooling myself and that I didn't get it until now. So I was like slow on the uptake. All these things went through my mind, and I immediately vowed I'm going to go vegan on the spot. Okay? And then I said, how am I going to do this? Because I love my pizza, I love my yogurt, I love my pedas, And then I visited Hyderabad, the same trip. And my host said she just went vegan. I said, whoa, how did that happen? She said, well, I was asked to go inspect this slaughterhouse and certify that they were meeting regulations. And I saw what was being slaughtered, and I immediately went vegan. And these were buffaloes, mother buffaloes, who had just stopped giving milk. And they were all in this truck. And they were all looking, saying, what is happening to us? And they all had shiny skins, which means they had been very well taken care of until then. So she went vegan when she saw that. And then she said, she gave me soy yogurt for lunch. And I had that soy yogurt and I said, if I can make this, I have no problem, So I came home after that trip, and I was vegan for the rest of the trip. I didn't eat any yogurt. And I came home and I told my wife, I've gone vegan. And she said, if you cook, I'll eat, but I'm not doing it for you. So that's how I became the cook in the family, and I started cooking vegan food. And the good news is, within a month, all my arthritis pains went away. All my inflammation went away. Okay? And I began to feel like a 16-year-old again. Okay? And because I was cooking vegan, my mother-in-law's diabetes went away. Okay? Within a year, she was weaned off all her diabetes medications. And so the health was a consequence. The driver was environment, in my case. Then, within a week after I went vegan, maybe a week after I came home to the US, I had this huge sense of guilt lift off my shoulders. Because a week after I came home and I started doing my routines, I came to the realization that this is now permanent. I'm never going to go back. And once I realized I'm never going to go back, the guilt fell off my shoulders. Okay? And I didn't know where this guilt came from. At that point, I didn't know why I had so much guilt. Then 6 months later, I was visiting the same village in Rajasthan, and I was observing a woman milk her cow. And then the memories came flooding back to me about why I had that guilt. Okay, so the way the woman was milking the cow, the calf was tied in front of the mother. So she released the calf ran and started drinking from the mother. And within 30 seconds, the woman was trying to pull the calf away from the mother. And she couldn't do it. So she called her husband over, and they both pulled the calf away from the mother. And then they tied the calf in front of the mother, and the mother was now licking her baby, and the baby was bleating because he hadn't even started drinking. Then the woman milked the cow. Okay? And I could see that she milked every teat. There was nothing left from the cow. She took about 10 liters from the cow. And then she released the calf, so that the calf could go back and suck again, which sends a message to the mother that you are not producing enough milk for your baby, so go eat some more. So this is how we interfered in the cycle between a mother and a child. Because any mammal mother and a child have this feedback loop. If the baby stops drinking, then the mother will produce less next time. But the baby is still drinking when there is nothing left from the mother to give, the mother will try to produce more next time. Right? So that's the feedback loop that we interfere with as humans, and we make the baby look like a huge baby. Right? So when I saw that, I remembered a conversation between my grandmother and my grandfather when I was 7 years old. And we had been sent to their place to stay for the summer. My grandmother was telling my grandfather that this particular calf is drinking too much. Is not leaving any milk for the children. So what do I do? And my grandfather told my grandmother, don't let him drink to his fill, pull him away after 10 minutes. And as a child, I knew that there was something wrong going on. But I tried to put it away in the back of my mind and forget about it. But I never really did. And I think every time I drank milk, I had that guilt. And probably my arthritis was because of that,
It's just, what, it made me think of this crazy idea that we as a species thought of one day. We thought, okay, let's take a wild and free individual living out there of another species. Let's confine this individual. Let's force them to become pregnant and keeping them as prisoners. So you can do whatever you want from their bodies, not now, not even as a necessity, not that it ever was one, but to profit from them. And then in the end, when they're no longer profitable, you end up killing them and make even more profit out of them, right? And the fact that we learned how to enslave other people by enslaving beings of other species first, we know what's happened. And the fact that we know what's happened and what we're doing, it's our responsibility to change that course that we're on.
See, I mean, I don't... I also think that it was probably born out of necessity, okay, long time ago. When our ancestors migrated out of Africa, went to every part of the world, it was tough because it was during an ice age, right? And I'm sure they ran into all kinds of difficulties trying to survive wherever they went. So maybe someone, thousands of years ago was so desperate that he decided to drink the milk of a mother, mammal mother. And that's how he survived, right? Because those days, plant foods were not so widely available, especially during the ice age, okay? And especially when you don't have, transportation from Mexico to wherever, right? So it's, I don't blame my ancestors for what happened. I also see this as a progression. See, we first enslaved animals. Then we enslaved humans. We enslaved other humans. And then we freed the humans. Okay, we freed the women. So we've been slowly now, our morality has been improving, so to speak, right? So now we have to free the animals. That's the last step. Okay? So it's coming back full cycle. And now we know that we have access to all the plant foods that we want. We've created the tools and technologies we need to grow plants wherever we are. If we want to also, we can put greenhouses somewhere and grow whatever we want. So we are the last species that should be complaining about food, because we have plenty of food available, plenty of plant food available. It's now bringing back the ecosystems of the planet and stabilizing the climate. That's the number one concern for us. That should be the number one concern for us. Because if you do that, then you can thrive on this planet. And if you don't, you're going to die on this planet. Okay? And it's black and white to me as far as what's going to happen to our children and grandchildren. Because there are only two choices. Continue to say, I want to die. Continue to say, I want to live.
Tell me about year zero, because that's one of the things that when I came across it really shocked me. You and I, we've come to that point where we consider every single being as family, regardless of species, regardless of the fact that they walk on four or two, or they fly or swim. They're all family to us. We care about them, and if we see any one of them in trouble, we'd do anything we can to help them. But when I came across year zero, that's what really shook me up. So just tell me a little bit about what that means.
Yeah. As an engineer, as a systems engineer, I look for what is the leading indicator on how fast we have to make this transformation. When do we have to finish this project by, right? The Vegan World Project. And because I knew that we have to get there. We have to stop killing if you want to live. There's no question in my mind. The question is, how soon do we have to do it? And so I was following the World Wildlife Fund Living Planet report to understand this, to answer this question. They said that between 1970 and 2010, we wiped out 52% of all wild animals on the planet in terms of the total weight. 40 years, we wiped out more than half, 52%. Now, 1970 was not exactly a pristine year for wild animals, meaning between 10,000 years ago and 1970, we had already wiped out 60% of them.
Wow, okay.
Okay? Because we had taken away their habitat for grazing our own farmed animals and so on. So wild animals were already down by 60%. So from that low level, from the 40% that was left, we wiped out another 52%. Okay, which means it's only like 18% of the original is left, right? When that report came out in 2014, I did an extrapolation based, assuming that we were killing wild animals proportional to the size of our economy. And I extrapolated that if the economy keeps growing the way it is growing, it was growing at about 1.5% per year, something like that. I calculated that we were on track to kill 100% of wild animals by 2026. Okay, so that's what I call year zero. So I made that calculation in 2014, and I was shocked. And I thought, I did this calculation doing an extrapolation based on a very crude model. So let me just look at what models are being used in the literature, whether my models are correct or not. And the literature had several kinds of models. There was one called the predator-prey model that they were using. And in the predator-prey model, the idea was, as the prey population dies off, the predator population will die off too. Because there's not enough for the predator to eat. And then the prey population will go up because there are not enough predators there. And then the predator population will go up. So you get this waveform that follows each other, like a sine wave. And that's what they were predicting for humans and nature. So I wrote to the author and I said, are you sure that this model would work for humans versus nature? Because what I'm observing is that humans, as we deplete nature, we're actually coming up with more and more sophisticated technologies to exploit the rest of nature. So are you sure that it'll go and then humans will die off and then it'll come back? And his response shocked me because he said, I hadn't thought of that. I hadn't thought of including technology into the model, right? So I think with technology, we are on track to exploit until you get to a point where it's zero. You just die off, right? It's a steep cliff when you do that. And so then, I realized that maybe my model's correct, I don't know. But I'll still wait for the next report from the World Wildlife Fund. And that came out in 2016. And it said that between 1970 and 2012, we wiped out 58% of all wild animals. So in 2 years, it went from 52% to 58%. Okay, so you can then calculate, in 16 years, it'll wipe out 48%, so which means it'll be 100%. So even a linear extrapolation will take you to 100% by 2026. So that's when I said, that's year zero. So that became a year that we have to get to a vegan world by then.
And the thing about this extinction is it creeps up on us. It doesn't happen in front of us. But every now and again you hear in the news, this species' last member is gone now. No more members left. It's not something that unfortunately shocks people enough. But we have to realize that this is happening to thousands of species, and more than half, probably even more, is species we haven't even heard of or even discovered, and we're just wiping them out.
Right. Yeah. You think back and remember how many birds there were in the sky when you were a child. And look now and see how many birds there are. Right? That itself will tell you that there is something really, really wrong going on. Okay? Or insects. How many insects were there in your childhood versus how many there are now? That will tell you there is something wrong going on. Because it's not waiting until the last member of a species dies off to declare extinction. When you bring them down to, say, 100 members or 200 members, they no longer are a viable species. Because they are going to be intermingling with themselves, right? And so genetically they are going to go down the hill very, very quickly. We've seen that happen. So the lion, the Asiatic lion, was one of the most hunted animals in India during the colonial era. Okay, and until they hunted the lion down to 10 members. There were only 10 members left. Then they stopped. And they created a lion sanctuary called the Gore Sanctuary in Gujarat, where the remaining 10 lions were left there to recover. After 150 years, 120 years of the Gir sanctuary being in operation. Now there are 100 lions, around 100 lions, and they are so genetically weak that they are going to die off. Okay? Because they have been, basically cousins have been marrying cousins, Right? So they are weak. They're no longer the old lions that used to be there.
Which makes perfect sense. So given the time that we have left, what is the most effective action plan that we can all incorporate? What should we do? Because we're really seriously running out of time. And in your opinion, as a systems engineer, looking at it from that point of view, the fastest, most effective solutions that we have out there for ordinary human citizens to implement, what can we do?
Well, go vegan as quickly as possible. And go talk to all your friends and family and convince them to go vegan as quickly as possible. Tell them the story. Tell them that we are transitioning or transforming from a climate heating civilization to a climate healing civilization. And that requires us to make this U-turn, in terms of how we treat animals. And so it's only when we free the animals, we are going to free ourselves. And we are going to free the earth. Right? So it's education. First and foremost is education. Education in your own circles. Okay? People may not listen to you at first, but when you show them all the facts, this is why I did a speech at the Oxford Union. I try to make it as clear as possible as to why the world has to go vegan as quickly as possible. Right? So I'm publishing that. I'm saying, please take that speech. All the data is there. All the references for the data is there. And anyone can go and verify what I'm saying. So if you tell that to your friends and family, if you show them that data, they can make their own decision. But at least you have done your part in telling them. So I say education is number one. Best way to reach your friends and family is to cook healthy food, invite them and feed them. And when you're feeding them, they listen to you. Okay? So you could have like a party, and it could be a party for the end of the Ice Age. So you're celebrating that we have done something amazing as a species. Right? We've ended the Ice Age. And then tell them this story. And give them healthy food. And I bet you that you can convince them, So that I think is the most important thing that a vegan can do today.
And where can they go if we say, okay, you know what, have a look at the facts. That's all there. Where can they go? Should they go to climatehealers.org? Is that the main hub that we can go to?
Right. Go to climatehealers.org. You can look at the blog articles that I've been writing. I write once a week. And you can join the email list. So I'll be updating it every week. You can look at the facts that are there on climatehealers.org. We have a web page called Facts that you can look up and you'll see all the references. All the links are there. So you can go verify yourself that what we are saying is true. And I'm just taking the data that's available to me and making sense out of it. And coming up with solutions based on that. And the number one step in that solution is for the world to go vegan as quickly as possible. I'm not even saying, eat half the amount of meat that you used to eat, Saying this is not the time for half measures. This is the time to go all in. Because it's a matter of life and death for our children and grandchildren. Okay. I have a granddaughter who actually inspired me down this entire path because I was very depressed when she was born.
Why were you depressed?
I thought we were going to hell in a handbasket. There is nothing I can do about it. Okay, I cannot solve this problem. And she immediately convinced me that we can solve this problem and we are perfect exactly as we are. because she was perfect exactly as she is. Okay? So she helped me look at life from a different angle, look at all the problems from a different angle. And that's when I realized we've been a climate heating species for so long, and we are now becoming a climate healing species. And then we'll become a climate harmonizing species. So I came up with the analogy of the caterpillar turning to the butterfly. Okay, and that's what I wrote in Carbon Dharma. That's because of her, right? And so I say that I want to leave a thriving world for our children and grandchildren, and I want that to be our legacy as a generation, right? And then we will be known as the generation that turned it around. Right? And that's something that I wake up every day wanting to do.
I know you've invested everything, all your time, energy, and money to make this happen now by 2026. There will be lots of people out there saying, I don't have enough time, I need to make money, I need to provide for this, I just don't have time or the energy for this. What can we say to people who are, I feel, almost stuck in this rat race of wanting to earn more, provide more, maybe for whatever reason, but knowing full well that there's not going to be a future? What do you say to them?
Well, it's like, we are on the Titanic, right? We are on the Titanic of a civilization, and we are trying to climb to the top of the Titanic so that we are the last ones to drown, right? And I say to people, look, there are lots of lifeboats. We're already getting on lifeboats, okay? There's no point in sticking around on the Titanic. So if you're trying to get to the top of the Titanic, you're going in the wrong direction. Because get on the lifeboats and get out of there. Yeah. Okay, there are plenty. So because a vegan world is the only way out for us. And I say that when you get to a vegan world, it will not be the same money system. Okay? We have to change the money game. So all of our games have to change. All of the stories we tell have to change. So from violent stories to non-violent stories. From finite games, like the game of money is a finite game. It's a game with winners and losers, And from finite games, you have to start playing infinite games. Because sustainability is about infinite games, not finite games. So I say, think about if you're putting lots of effort into making money today, and if I told you that that's going to be useless after 3 years, what will you do? Right? Look at it that way. Okay? Because if we continue the current system for another 3 years, we're going to kill all the wild animals. Then it doesn't matter how much money you have. Right? So, knowing that, what will you do with your life?
And just underpinning that is the fact that if the wild animals go, when they die, they're the ones supporting the life support systems that are keeping us alive. So when they die, ultimately we die as well.
Right. When they die, the system has gone crazy. The ecosystems of the planet have gone crazy, right? So they have no sustaining animals there. And so which means that they're going to die. When they die, all their CO2 is going up into the air. Just think about how many extra wildfires are happening now, right? So forests are dying because of that. So when you get to a point where there are no wild animals left, then all the forests are going to die. Which means all the CO2 that's stored on land is going to go up in the atmosphere. Do you know how hot it'll get? We don't even know. So it could be a runaway climate change. And we could have the Venus syndrome on planet Earth. Venus, the temperature of Venus is 460 degrees Celsius on the surface. Is that what you're trying to do? Well, you're asking for it. If you keep burning down forests, that's what you're asking for. Right? So we have to ask the right things with nature.
So do you feel right now, is it our ignorance that is keeping us stuck? Or is it lack of empathy? What do you feel? Why are we so stagnant in our behavior?
Thinking. See, we are a species that we are a herd species, okay? And we have been sort of conditioned to go along this way, against our nature. Because our nature is not violence. Most people don't think they're violent people at all, okay? Because fundamentally we are all compassionate people. But we are sort of conditioned to go against our nature and march along with the current violent system that we are in. It's a system of normalized violence. Okay, we are violent towards animals. We are violent towards other people. It may happen behind, on the other side of the earth, so you don't know what's going on, but it's happening. Right? There is slavery still going on. We are violent towards other human beings too, and so it's a system of normalized violence that is very good at heating the climate, and that's what we have been doing. To become a system of normalized non-violence that's healing the climate, that's cooling the climate, we have to just come home to who we really are. In that sense, it's an easy transition for us, right? I mean, I think agricultural revolution in that sense was a harder transition, where we had to become violent towards animals, right? And so because there we had to go against our nature. Now we have to come back in alignment with our nature. Because you ask a child, you give a child a rabbit or an apple, the child will bite the apple and play with the rabbit. There are hardly any children who are going to bite the rabbit and play with the apple. Right? So fundamentally we have non-violence within us. We love animals. Yeah. Right? So it's coming home to that true nature of ours. And that's what the vegan transformation is all about. Okay, the transformation towards a cooling civilization is all about. And I say, it's now abundantly clear that we have to be in alignment with the life support systems of the planet. And knowing that going vegan is going to heal all 6 planetary boundary transgressions, why wouldn't we do it? Of course we're going to do it. Okay? So knowing that we're going to do it, then how would you act? Would you still go and work to get an extra money? Knowing that it's going to be worth nothing at the end? Because we're going to be playing a different game. Yeah. Money is a game, right? To me, money is just a game. We have just rules of the game, and who can print the money, that's the rule. What can you do with the money? If you do this with the money, you are rewarded. If you do that with the money, you're going to get thrown in jail. So these are all rules we put in place. And we all go by those rules, right? So it's a game with these rules. And I said, we have to create a different game. To create an infinite game where everyone feels like they belong. And this is what Kate Raworth and her donut economics is all about. So think of donut economics, a vegan donut economics, where you have everyone having the basic needs met, and we have to stay within the planetary boundaries of the planet. So which means the economy has to be within a donut.
Yeah. On a recent talk that I gave to potential MPs and councillors, we talked about the fact that no one gets left behind. And this is true for both humans and animals. We're all animals anyway, but what I mean is every single being, no one gets left behind. So that means looking after our poor, making sure their health is better, looking after all of us. And I think that really encapsulates that concept of making sure that everyone's looked after.
Absolutely, yeah. Can we not create a system like that? I said, of course we can. I'm a systems engineer. Let me add it. I can show you how to do this. Lots of systems engineers who can help you.
We have to sift. I think we all have to learn how to sift through the politics and the money-driven actions that are underpinning the movement right now.
Yeah, it's like it's actually getting politics out of it and treating it as a problem. And how do you solve a problem? Okay, yeah, it's a problem. It's bringing our creativity to the fore, not our politics. It's not about making sure that someone's position is maintained, which is what politics is all about, right?
In this journey of yours, who has been your biggest inspiration, your biggest influence on this journey?
Undoubtedly my granddaughter, Kimaya. Yeah.
And tell me how that all started, because for a lot of us, it's normally someone who's a lot older than us who's your inspiration, your mentor, but for you, it's the opposite. So what's the story behind that?
Well, when she was born in 2010, I was probably one of the most depressed environmentalists on the planet because I thought there was nothing I could do. That the world is going to hell in a handbasket and I'm just going to stand here and watch because there's nothing I can do about it. And that we are the only species that doesn't belong on Earth. Take human beings out and the planet will be fine. But put human beings in and the planet dies. So I had this perception of humans as a really awful species that has messed up the whole planet. And then when she was born, my wife told me, you have to go see this girl. There's something magical about her. And she was about a month old when I went to see her for the first time. Because my wife, as soon as she was born, my wife took off. Right? She went to Phoenix, and then she came back a couple of weeks later, and then within a couple of days she was back again, in Phoenix. So the next time she came back, she told me, you have to go see this girl. There's something magical about her. And then I did. I went to see her. And sure enough, there was something about her that immediately hit me that we belong exactly as we are. That I'm not telling the right story. Just backing up a little bit, the previous year I was in a sanctuary in the Western Ghats of India where I was observing an elephant breaking branches of trees, eating the leaves, throwing the branch away. Breaking another branch of the tree, eating the leaves, throwing the branch away. And she was doing it so fast, I was telling Pamela, the owner of the sanctuary, isn't that elephant destroying your sanctuary? Don't you want to stop that? And Pamela said, no, the elephant will know when to stop. The elephant belongs exactly as she is. Wherever the elephant broke branches of trees, that's where the sunlight will stream and nourish the underbrush. Wherever the elephant trampled on bushes in the forest, that's where new pathways are formed in the forest. She said the elephant has no choice but to belong in nature exactly as she is. And that's when, when I saw Kimaya for the first time and she looked up at me and she smiled, she convinced me that she belongs exactly as she is, just like the elephant. And just like I didn't understand the elephant when I first saw the elephant breaking branches of trees, I realized I didn't understand humanity. Okay? So that there is something that we were doing that we weren't aware of. And all along the answer was staring at me in the face, because as soon as we admit that we're changing the climate of the planet, well, we've been changing the climate of the planet, which means that we have a responsibility to stabilize the climate of the planet and maintain the climate of the planet. So we became the climate harmonizing species. That's the equivalent of letting the sunlight stream and nourish the underbrush. That's what we have been doing all along. And so, because of Kimaya, I was able to turn my head around and look at humanity as if we belong exactly as we are. And I was so grateful to her. I came back and I wrote my first book. Okay, I was so inspired. It poured out of me. That was Carbon Dharma. And it came out in 10 months. I finished it in 10 months. Then I began, I realized that I have to learn from this girl as opposed to try to teach her anything. So I resolved that I was going to do whatever she wanted and keep my eyes open so that I can learn from her. Because I knew that I was conditioned. Okay, that I had gone through life, I was at that point 50 years old, and there are things that I think I know, which I don't question anymore. And she was fresh, right? She was innocent, and she was looking at the world through her eyes. And I wanted to see the world through her eyes, see the perfection through her eyes. So I made 3 promises to her when she could understand what I was saying. Maybe by the time she was 2 or 3, I told her that she's the most amazing thing that ever happened to me, and that number 1, and that'll never ever change. And number 2, I'll always love her no matter what she does, and she can count on that. And number 3 is that I'll always tell her the truth. I'll never ever lie to her. Okay? And with these promises, she began to be very open with me. She would tell me the first thing that came to her mind. Okay? And so this way I was able to get her reaction to life unfiltered. And that helped me open my eyes to some of the things that I'd been conditioned. Okay? So by the time she was 2, we were, I think by the time she was a year and a half, we moved to be with her in Phoenix. So we moved to Phoenix, and she was living with her parents, but she would come and stay with us for 3 days a week or 4 days a week, because her parents had, strange working hours, right? Because of the jobs they were doing. So we got a chance to really get to know her and really start learning from her, at least for me. And so I wrote a book about that, later on, because I used to tell stories about her to people and they would tell me, why don't you write it all down? So finally last year I sat down and wrote it. And then I asked Kimaya if she would illustrate it for me, and she agreed. She and her mother illustrated it. And so that book was The Pinky Promise. It came out in January of this year. So it has 12 chapters, which are 12 stories that happened between me and Kimaya, starting with, of course, her birth. And every chapter is like one step of a transformation. So it's a 12-step transformation book that actually illustrates how I got transformed by her.
Brilliant. You know what? I love that, because I think for anyone who reads that book, it'll just give them a better understanding about not only how to heal the planet, but why it needs to be done, but also how we need to find that within ourselves, and that we're all responsible, and to never let go of hope. So that brings me on to the next question. How do you hold on to hope when we are faced with such unsurmountable odds when it comes to our planet? How do you hold on to hope?
Well, I don't consider it to be hope, because hope to me comes from a position of fear. Faith comes from a position of love. And I say it's faith in humanity, faith in the order, universal order, that there was a meaning to our existence all along, and therefore we will be called to fulfill that meaning, So I see this as a 500,000-year project that humanity has been on ever since we discovered the use of fire. We discovered the use of fire in order to heat the planet and get the planet out of an ice age. And we have successfully done that. Okay? So now we have overheated the planet a little bit, and we need to start cooling it a little bit and then stabilizing it, because there is a stable state for the planet at a temperature that was there 200 years ago. There is no stable state at higher temperatures than where we are now on the planet. So knowing that, at least I don't see any. It looks like everything is going to go hotter and hotter if we let it get hotter. So this is why I think we need to bring back the ecosystems of the planet and stabilize it at the temperature that was there in the pre-industrial era. And so we, have to basically trust each other. Okay? We have to create a system that's based on love, as opposed to a system that's based on fear, which is what we have now. What I mean by that is, in this system that we live in, this civilization, in the industrial civilization especially, by default you do not belong. You belong only when you earn a living. Okay, so which means you have to do what the master wants. And so we have created a system in which by default humans don't belong. They have to earn their way in. That's not a system based on love. right? So a system that's based on love, you belong right from the outset, and then you will contribute what you can. So that's the kind of system we need to be designing and that we need to be implementing.
Yeah. Where can we find that reminder? So, to answer my own question, I heard about VCOP that you have, and that's every 3-4 months.
Every 3 months, yeah.
Every 3 months, and I've just realized that could be another great way of coming together, like-minded people, energizing each other, learning from each other, because for this movement to be sustained and the energy and the actions to be sustained, we need to keep coming back to each other to find that energy again, because otherwise we're all in isolation. I'm doing one thing, my wife's doing another thing, we have another group's doing somewhere else, and we're all, there's always this inherent wish all the time that we could be together and work together, but in this world we're so separated. And I think VCOP would be a really good way of coming together. Would you agree with that?
That's the intent of VCOP, for all of us to come together, because that's how we did the internet also. We used to come together every 4 months during the internet era, and then we used to have interim meetings, which means we were really getting together every 2 months. And every 2 months we get together, and then we figure out what haven't we solved yet, and then we go and work on that and come back the next meeting and report on it. So there was accountability, there was a continuous effort at solving the larger problem, and that's the intent of VCOP. Because I was just implementing what I knew. The intent of VCOP is for us to do what the UN is supposed to be doing. But since the UN does not even talk about food at all, they hardly ever mentions, and they still serve meat and dairy and fish and eggs at the UN meetings, I said we need to have a serious meeting where we are actually working on the solution. So this is why we started VCOP. It's a vegan convergence of the people. Okay, and we also have a vegan sustainable development goals, as opposed to the UN sustainable development goals, because the UN SDGs have a Trojan horse of a goal called goal number 8, which is about growing economy, the economic growth. And everyone is pretending to meet all the other goals by just growing the economy. And so they're just greenwashing the entire thing. So I'm saying vegan sustainable development goals would be, you drop goal number 8 and you add goal number 18, which is zero animal exploitation. Okay, that makes it a vegan sustainable development goals. And so now, how do you implement this? So then you have to talk about how do you provide healthy food for people, because goal number 1 is no poverty, goal number 2 is zero hunger, and goal number 3 is good health and well-being. So then how do you get good health and well-being? It starts with healthy food. Then of course you have to have exercise. So there are so many things we need to do to get good health and well-being implemented. Because unless we heal ourselves as human beings, we're not going to work on healing the planet. Right? So this is the oxygen mask rule. Put on your own oxygen mask first, and then you can go out and help others. Right?
What would you say to these people that argue this action that you're proposing by saying that the entire economy would collapse if we shifted away? What would you say to that?
Well, if we shift away and the entire economy collapses, it is because the Ponzi scheme always collapses. It's not anyone's fault. For that reason, if we continue growing the economy, then we're basically continuing to grow the diseases and the death of the animals and the destruction of the planet. And our own death eventually, right? So why would you want to continue an economy like that, right? So you have to create something new where you don't depend on growth to sustain an economy, right? So it has to be based on achieving an objective. So meeting an SDG, right? That's the objective towards which we're all working and creating an economy around. Right? So meeting all the goals, the Sustainable Development Goals. And our measure should be, are we meeting the goals or not? Right?
Because ultimately, even if our aim is to make more money, we're making that money to feel more secure, right?
Right.
And what we're trying to do with this new model is to get to security
The
first.
beginning,
Yeah,
yes.
in the beginning. So you won't need this imagined, this imagined security blanket
Right.
of what we call money.
Right.
And there'll be less danger. So if there's less dangers, you need less money to help you out, right? So you need less money anyway. If you secure a better planet, you'll need less money anyway, right?
Yeah, see, money itself, what is money? Money is basically a measure of your time and your resources.
Yeah.
What are you going to use it for, right? And you then use money to get time and resources from other people, right? So that's how we collaborate in the money system.
Yeah.
I say you can do collaboration around goals, right? So you're all working on SDG 2, let's say, zero hunger. So people are saying, so who's going to grow the food? Who's going to now feed the food? Who's going to cook the food? So you create a network around that, you create work around that, and people go and do it and execute on it. So you have a team
as volunteers.
Yes, as volunteers. Because basic needs for everybody is met. Right?
In the end, this is what I tell people as well, that in the end, we can't eat and breathe money.
Yeah.
We need a living planet to do that.
Yeah.
Right?
So when you're killing the planet by using this money system, because the money system is based on coercion and fear, okay? It's saying that there are certain jobs that no one will do unless you make them hungry, and only then they will do that job. So this is why 800 million people go hungry in the system, okay? Hunger is used as a tool to get people to do things they don't want to do. And I say that in the new system that is based on fear, it should not be based on fear like that. It's the new system that's based on love, right? Where you are taken care of and then you're contributing. There is going to be work that is dirty work, needs to get done. And someone will have to volunteer to do it. Okay? And someone will. See, the thing is, when people are healthy, they don't want to sit around. They will. The definition of health is that you want to be active. You want to do something to contribute to humanity or to all life. So things will get done. So and I see the example of that in Sadhana Forest. Right? Everyone is fed, everyone has shelter, and all the work gets done.
Right? Tell me for those of us who don't know about Sadhana Forest, what is Sadhana Forest?
Sadhana Forest is a project started by a couple from Israel and their family, where they wanted to bring back the original ecosystems that was there in South India on about 70 acres of land. Okay, it's now a 20-year-old project, and it became successful when they first dug holes in order to retain the water, the rainwater that's falling, and they created lakes, and that brought the animals to come drink the water, and they would then drop seeds that are native to that region. And so they also planted trees, but according to Aviram, 3 out of 4 trees there were planted by nature. Okay, so the people only planted 1 out of 4. And now the original ecosystem is back and the wild animals are back. Okay, and in that community, it's maintained by human beings who are volunteers. And even human waste is converted to soil and used in the forest. So that's how the soil is being built up too. So it's not just from the vegetation, but also from humans. Right?
And here we have a community that is thriving.
That's right.
Without money.
Right.
Based on nature itself.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. It's so beautiful. And you were saying that they're replicating that model in other countries now as well, right?
They're replicating it in Haiti, in Kenya, in Namibia, and in actually Kenya too. Sorry, and in the state of Meghalaya in India.
Yeah.
So
besides going vegan, which is the baseline of this movement, the next thing we can all get involved in is similar projects of revitalizing nature,
right.
growing trees, reforesting,
right.
looking after the soil.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. See, I estimate that we need to restore, there is 14 billion acres of land that we can restore, with forests. And in Sadhana Forest, it's about 70 acres, and there are about 40 people working on it at any given time. And if you just do the math, you'll see that to restore 14 billion acres at the same level, you will need 8 billion people, okay, which is our population. So I say that nature knows what she's doing. She needs all of us, and she knows that. She's given us now a task to do.
Yeah, and now is the moment. And just like you said, if we delay it anymore,
right,
we're going to lose this chance.
Right.
Now is the last generation that can do anything about it.
Right, and so this is the light we see at the end of the tunnel. There's a tunnel. It's all dark around us, but the light that we see is that if we restore the ecosystems of the planet, put our minds to it, and change our game so that it's around love and not fear, we can survive. And so can we create a system that's based on love? That's the question, right? I mean, I have friends who say, I don't think people will do any work if you feed them. And I say that means those people who are not, they're not healthy if they're not willing to do any work. I go there and I have so much energy that I want to do something. So I'm usually volunteering in the kitchen, right? So anywhere I go, I'm not sitting around, I'm doing something, right? Because I feel healthy and I want to be active. And I know my why, I know my purpose, okay? So I have these 8 ways in which we can heal ourselves, the 8 healing activations. And that comes from the 8 risky behaviors that the American College of Lifestyle Medicine identified is responsible for 90% of the healthcare costs in the world. Okay, these 8 risky behaviors are: first, poor diet; second is lack of exercise; third is smoking. I think smoking was number 3, and number 4 is irregular health checkups, so not enough health checkups. Number 5 is mental stress. Number 6 is lack of sleep. Number 7 is poor standard of care. And number 8 is excessive alcohol consumption. So the 8 healing activations. So and the problem today is that these 8 risky behaviors, they're causing 90% of the healthcare costs, which means they're responsible for 90% of the healthcare economy in the world. Which means those who are trying to grow the economy are trying to promote these risky behaviors, because that's how we grow the economy right now, right? So we have then, created a system around disease. So if you want to create a system around health, then you need to promote the opposite of these 8 risky behaviors. So it starts with healthy vegan diet. And they say, make sure a healthy vegan diet is freely available to every human being on the planet. Subsidize it, okay, to be free. And second is, regular exercise, yogasana. That should also be taught to every child. Every child should know how to take care of their body, right? And instead of smoking, the opposite of that is conscious breathing, pranayama, right? And then irregular health checkups, regular health checkups. I mean, we take our cars in for regular checkups, regular maintenance. Our body should also have the same kind of care. Okay. From mental stress, I say it's meditation. So you have to teach students meditation. And lack of sleep, of course, inadequate sleep. And that comes when you do these first 5 things anyway. From poor standard of care, the opposite is having a sense of purpose. Okay. Every one of us has a gift to give to the community. And we just have to find that why. And that probably is the responsibility of the school, to teach you, to help you find your why you're there. And finally, from excessive alcohol consumption, the opposite of that is contact with nature. So the 8 healing behaviors should be encouraged in the new system. Okay? And it should be made freely available to human beings.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I think, you know what, we've literally closed the circle
Right.
from what I wanted to achieve in the beginning. But I know this is just the beginning for all of us, because you've literally instilled hope in so many. I know you go around the world talking to students, talking to businessmen, talking to officials, and you're doing everything you can. You've given you putting all your time, energy, and money into this, to making and hoping, or not, forget hoping. You want to make a vegan world by 2026. That is your aim. And
Right.
that should be the aim for all of us. So I just wanted to just ask you one last thing. In order to find your work and find you, where should we go?
climatehealers.org. And so that's the website that's the website for the organization I started in 2007. And it's a repository of everything I know. I've been putting it into that. Yeah.
Thank you. What's next for you now?
There's more work to be done. I have 3 years, and we need to figure out this system, work out the details of the system. So there are 7 strategic actions that I've started to do that. And it's executing, executing on this and refining it as we go, and building momentum around these actions.
Yeah. So, and these actions are on your website.
Yeah, the 7 strategic actions. Yeah. So that's first is education. Second is healing ourselves. So with healthy food and these 8 healing activations. Third is setting our goals correctly. So that's where the vegan sustainable development goals come in. And fourth is writing a constitution for the new system. That's actually being done now. It's the Codes for a Healthy Earth. It's already been done. So we're going to adopt that. And that's in a website called codes.earth. Fifth is creating a new economic game, which is, around the goals. So basically it's vegan donut economics, you can call it. So making sure that everybody has their basic needs met and we stay within the bounds of the planet. Okay. Sixth is a common spiritual initiative. So the religions have to get together in this healing activation, right? And so bringing the religions together as opposed to using religion to fight each other, right? And the last is restoring the ecosystems of the planet. That's the 7th action that we have to do. So as you can see, all these 7 actions, it is happening already. So it's not that we have to start afresh, but it's coordinating it all together.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much. And yeah, I look forward to our next one now.
Yeah.
But I urge everyone who's listened to this, climatehealers.org is the place to go to, the website to go to, and have a look at all the information's out there, and anything that you need in terms of help, collaboration, they can contact you, right?
Absolutely.
We've got our plan now. We've got our action plan. So let's execute it.
Thanks, Keva.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you.